The pitch deck glowed like a miniature sunrise on Avery Carter's laptop, all gradients and jargon, omnichannel synergy, behavioral lift, aggressive Q4 capture. The glass walls of the 33rd floor conference room turned Manhattan into a glittering diorama. Colleagues, perfect hair, perfect smiles, perfect caffeine breath, took their places like actors hitting their marks. Avery's pulse skipped, then galloped. "Ready?" asked Marisol, the account lead. She didn't look up from her tablet. Nobody looked up anymore. Avery nodded, but the floor swayed slightly, as if the building were a ship. 2 weeks of 4-hour nights had compressed into a leaden ring at the base of Avery's skull. Slide 1 loaded, then froze, then loaded again. The client, 3 partners with matching watches, watched the progress wheel like vultures circling a desert road. "Good morning," Avery said, and the voice came out hoarse, unfamiliar. "I'm Avery Carter, strategist. Today we're..." The room narrowed. Words scattered like beads from a broken string. Avery tried to breathe but couldn't find the bottom of the breath. A sound, thin, metallic, shivered in the ears. The slide blurred into a smear of orange and white. Someone touched Avery's elbow. "Let's take a second," Marisol murmured. Someone else dimmed the lights. A bottle of water materialized. Avery stared at it. The label seemed to hum. The partners exchanged polite, bored concern. "We can reconvene," said one, already standing. Avery's chest loosened enough to drag in air. Shame arrived right behind the oxygen, hot and bruising. The pitch was rescheduled for tomorrow morning, like a threat dressed as kindness. In the restroom, Avery braced both hands on cool porcelain and watched a pale stranger in the mirror mouth the words, "You're fine, you're fine, you're fine." The phone buzzed. "Mom." Avery considered letting it ring into the void, but old muscle memory answered. "Hey, Mom." "Ave," came the voice, a whisper sanded by worry. "It's Grandma May." She took a turn. "Your Aunt Joy's at the hospital, but..." "Look, honey, they say it's not emergency, but it's not great, and she keeps asking for you." The floor reared up again, but differently this time. "Is she? What happened?" "She's 87, Mom said, meaning everything and nothing. It's her heart. They're adjusting meds. She's stubborn as a mule." She asked what the Yankees are doing mid-game from a gurney. A wet laugh. "But Ave, could you come?" In Avery's planner, the week was a mosaic of obligation. Pitch, debrief, sprint review, client dinner, performance check-in. The mere thought of stepping out of that scaffolding made something feral inside bristle. But beneath that, quieter, older, was a voice from summers long ago. A woman on a porch swing, cardinals fussing in the maple, telling stories about weather and war as if they were one thing. "I'll get a flight," Avery heard themselves say. Back at the desk, Marisol peered over her tablet. "Everything okay?" "It's my grandmother," Avery said. "I need a couple of days." Marisol's face arranged itself into the company-approved empathy. "Family first," she said. "Do what you need. We'll recalibrate." Avery opened a travel site. Willow Creek, Kansas, 1 airport an hour away, 2 flights with a layover. The total cost popped up with an accusatory chime. Avery clicked purchase. The hum of the office faded to a woolly murmur as the screen confirmed the transaction, as if the decision had pressed a mute button on the entire life Avery had so carefully engineered. On the way home to pack, the city was indifferent. Taxis chopped through crosswalks. A delivery bike shot past like a thrown knife. Avery climbed the 5 flights to the 1-bedroom and stood among the artifacts of effort. Rower folded like a trapped insect, vitamin packs, plants trained along twine as if aspiring to become something else. The suitcase yawned open. Avery folded habit and competence into it, plus a sweater with a collar Grandma May used to tug straight when Avery was 11 and grouchy. As night settled, Avery sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the phone. No new emails, no old emergencies miraculously solved. Just a calendar with a hole ripped in it, and a ticket to a town with 2 diners and a grain elevator that dictated the wind. In the quiet, another voice spoke up. This one not from memory but from somewhere behind the ribs. "Go. Before you forget how." The regional airport smelled faintly of popcorn and jet fuel. Avery's layover coffee tasted like burnt paper. On the second flight, a 30-seat puddle jumper. Everyone seemed to know someone. A man across the aisle wore a cap advertising a seed company and talked about rain like it owed him money. From the air, Kansas in late spring looked like a quilt Grandma May would have admired. Squares of wheat and soy patched with glossy ponds. Avery pressed a forehead to the window and tried to reconcile this geometry with the messy fact of leaving at 18 with a scholarship and a promise never to return except for holidays. Willow Creek's Main Street hadn't changed. Swinging signs for hardware, thrift, pharmacy, diner. The same brick courthouse, its clock perpetually 5 minutes off. The cab dropped Avery in front of the hospital, a low building pretending to be gentle. At the nurse's station, a woman with a blonde bun and a ferocious pen smiled. "You must be Avery. She's been bragging you were on your way. Room 214. Don't let her bully you into sneaking in candy. I'm on to her." In 214, sun sank through blinds into neat gold bars. A television murmured about tornadoes and ball scores. May Carter lay propped like a queen among pillows, her hair a silver halo escaping its clip, her eyes, still that ungovernable blue, bored holes through the beeping air. "Well," she said, as if Avery had been on the porch for 10 minutes instead of a decade. "You took your sweet time." Avery laughed and bit down on tears. "Layover in Dallas." "Dallas," she sniffed. "The pit stop to perdition. Come here." She patted the blanket. Her hands were narrower, the veins like tributaries. "Let me look at you. You got city shoulders." She squeezed. Tight as rebar. Aunt Joy materialized from the armchair. All cedar perfume and worry. "You made it." She hugged Avery hard, then set to straightening. "Flowers remote, orange pill bottle. Doctor says she's responding to the meds. We might get her home tomorrow if she behaves." She aimed a look at May that suggested she'd bet on a thunderstorm behaving first. "I behave just fine," May said. "It's the world that misbehaves." They talked around the bad thing. The fragile muscle beating rhythm into an old body, like townsfolk skirting high water. May wanted to know everything. Whether Avery cooked, delivery apps, Avery admitted and May clucked. Whether Avery was promoted, next review cycle. Whether Avery still listened to music with too many drums, it's called a beat grandma. Whether Avery was seeing anybody, pass. A nurse came and went, adjusted, annotated. Aunt Joy left to fetch a sandwich. The TV muttered about the price of corn. "What's wrong with your breathing?" May asked softly when they were alone. "You hold it like you're hiding it." Avery stared at the blinds. "Work's been a lot." "Work is a jealous thing," May said. "It don't share." Avery looked at her then, at the face mapped by laughter and storms. "I tanked a pitch yesterday. Panic attack. I've never." The shame surprised them again. "I couldn't find my words." May's eyes warmed. "Words ain't hunting dogs. They don't come just because you whistle." She reached out, found Avery's hand. "You'll find him again." Aunt Joy returned with a polystyrene box and maternal authority. "Eat. Both of you." They did solemnly as if at church. When visiting hours ended, Avery kissed May's cheek and promised to be back in the morning. Outside, the air smelled like wet dirt, the rain earlier having restored something Avery had forgotten about air. The motel across from the feed store still rented by the week to men who traveled with toolboxes. Avery checked in and lay awake watching a ceiling fan paddle the darkness, listening to the unspooling quiet of a town that slept when the sun said so. In the thin hour before dawn, Avery dreamed of the porch swing and woke with the knowledge that returning had not been an act of retreat but of surrender, to gravity, to history, to a voice that had been calling across years like wind over wheat. They released May the next afternoon with stern instructions and a grocery bag of pills, each bottle a pronouncement. Back at the old house on Sycamore, the porch still complained at the third board, and the screen door still ticked shut like a metronome keeping time to a song only the house knew. "Smells the same," Avery said, stepping into the cool dim. "Lemon oil, old books, the faint mineral tang of well water." "It smells like living," May said. "City places smell like ambition. This smells like tomatoes and perspiration and mercy." The living room was a museum of hands. Quilts layered over the sofa like topography. A bowl of wooden spools. The mantel held a row of photographs. A boy in uniform. A child on a tire swing. A young May with her hair in a scarf. A factory behind her. Eyes set to a far horizon. Avery lifted that one and studied it. You were my age there? Avery asked. 17, May said. The war had manners of stealing your birthdays, so you had to keep count yourself. Will you tell me? May cut in with a look that was equal parts pride and mischief. I will tell you plenty. But first chores. She pointed with a chin at the back door. The garden's gotten ideas while I was gone. It had. Tomato cages pitched like tents in a disorganized camp. Weeds declared their independence. Avery knelt under the swollen sky and remembered how dirt had a way of teaching you scale. Your problems were not so big, your hands not so clean, your heart not so precious it couldn't be scuffed. May directed from a lawn chair. Queen regnant of the backyard. Pull from the base, don't snap at the top. Mercy's no good on pigweed. You gotta be decisive. They harvested an apron of tomatoes, a fist of basil, a single stubborn cucumber. Inside, May showed Avery the old knife with the worn wooden handle, the angle for slicing that made a tomato into a deck of red cards. Sandwiches materialized. White bread, Miracle Whip, salt like small miracles. Here's a secret, May said, and bit into summer. Juice ran her wrist. Most things worth having are simple and hard at the same time. Avery chewed and let the afternoon enter through all available doors. Locusts droning, a truck downshifting on the highway, the house's heart beating in the water pipes. The tight ring around Avery's skull loosened a notch. After dishes, May led Avery into the front room and settled into the wingback by the lamp that had once illuminated bedtime stories and budget spreadsheets. She folded her small hands, linked with blue rivers, and looked at Avery over the rims of life. You want to know about the war, she said. But that ain't the first story. The first is dust. She told it. A childhood in the tale of the Dust Bowl, when the sky itself turned traitor. They'd shove wet towels under the doors and it would still creep in, the dust sticking to the backs of throats, turning milk into mud. Her mother's hands cracked like old paint. Men leaned on shovels and learned new words for failure. At night they listened to the radio like it was a church service for the whole country. And sometimes you could hear in the announcer's voice that he'd washed his face twice before saying what he had to say. It wasn't all bad, May added, defiant. We had neighbors. And we had each other. And we had the practice of joy. The what? Avery asked. Practice, May said. Same way you practice piano or prayer. You don't wait for joy to stroll up. You make a place for it. The lamp carved a soft hemisphere around them. Avery thought of the city apartment, always lit, never warm. How do you practice joy? May lifted a shoulder. We sang while we shelled peas. We told stories about people we loved as if they were saints. We made fun of the devil. I don't know. We just refused to let the worst thing be the only thing. Avery looked at the old photographs, at the faces who knew things that couldn't be put on a slide. That's a lot of choosing. It is, May said. Choice is the muscle they don't train you in school. Later, after Aunt Joy stopped by with pills and gossip and admonitions about sodium, after the dusk laid itself across the fields like a quilt, Avery lay in the guest room that had once been a sewing room and thought about muscles you couldn't see, choice, patience, joy. The house breathed. In the city, the body had become a tool for carrying a brain around. Here it was a place to live inside. Sleep came without negotiation. Rain arrived at midnight like a guest who didn't need knocking. It drummed the porch roof and softened the world until the highway went quiet and even the dog down the block surrendered its opinion. Avery woke, listened, and felt the odd relief of weather doing what weather should. In the morning the world smelled rinsed. May's kettle whistled an old tune. She moved like a person reading a familiar poem. Each line a place to put your weight. The pill organizer on the table looked like a game for patients and saints. Coffee? She asked. Please. Avery sat, watched steam ribbon into the kitchen light, and waited for the tightness to return. It loitered at the edge like a bad idea then wandered off as if bored. I want to hear about the city. May said, stirring honey. Tell me what the people are chasing. Everything, Avery said without meaning to. Then gentler. Better offices, better titles, better bodies. Money. Status. Being seen. And what are you chasing? Avery considered lying and found they were out of the energy required. Proof, they said. Of what? That I was right to leave. May nodded like the answer had been waiting on the porch for years. Leaving is a good muscle to have. Coming back is another. Most folks don't develop both. They ate toast. The clock ticked without anxiety. Outside, robins interrogated the lawn. After breakfast, May settled in the wingback again, lifted her chin toward the lamp, the stage light that called stories out of their corners. You asked about the war, she said. Okay. I was 17 when the telegram started visiting houses like a grief salesman. The boys went because what else did boys know how to do but go? We girls went to the factory because the boys had gone to war. We made parts for planes the size of churches. She told about the factory floor. Heat like August in an iron dress. Noise that set up house behind your ears. About girls learning torque and danger. About foremen who treated them like equipment and like daughters, sometimes in the same breath. About wages in an envelope that made her mother cry, not the sad tears. We were useful, she said simply, and Avery heard in the word a holiness that had nothing to do with LinkedIn. Did you love someone? Avery asked, surprised at the intimacy of their own question. May's eyes canted toward the window where the rain had left the glass jeweled. I loved many someones, she said, and the smile was not coy but compassionate toward her younger self. But there was one. His name was Thomas Hale. He had hands that apologized after they touched you, like he was sorry for the world being so rough in general. Avery let the image sit between them. What happened? War, she said without ornament. And then after life. Not tragic, just the usual kind. She waved a hand. I married your grandfather, who had jokes and 2 left feet and a way of believing sun would show. We were good. Good is underrated. They were quiet a moment. The refrigerator motor started up like a farmer clearing his throat. What I learned then, May continued, is that the world is a bossy thing. It will order you about and tell you what matters. You gotta have your own list or you'll spend your life making somebody else's. What's on your list? Avery asked. May didn't hesitate. Decency. Work worth doing. People worth loving. A little garden. She paused then added, and stories. Because stories hold a person together when the wind tries to take them apart. Avery felt something align, a little click in the dark. I used to think stories were entertainment, they said. Now it feels like scaffolding. Both, May said. What's the point of scaffolding if you can't hang Christmas lights on it? They laughed. The house laughed with them, a soft settling of wood. A tolerant sigh from the old register. Avery reached for their phone and turned its screen down without thinking. The part of their mind that cataloged responses and crafted arguments took the morning off. When Aunt Joy came by with Tupperware labeled in neat black marker, she found them mid-story and smiled. Lot of truth gets told under that lamp, she said. I swear the shade keeps secrets. She tapped the organizer. Mom, did you take your noon pills? Bosier than the world this one, May whispered to Avery stage loud, and swallowed the tablets like a magician. After lunch, Rain returned for a curtain call, and with it a memory that had been waiting at the edge of Avery's mind since the phone call in New York. The pitch, the progress wheel, the failure to find words. The shame lessened under the day's soft logic. Maybe the problem hadn't been the words at all. Maybe the problem had been the list. As evening gathered itself, May touched Avery's wrist. There's a story I haven't told. Not to your mother. Not to Joy. Not even to the pastor when he came around trying to collect testimonies like baseball cards. Her mouth tilted. It's about your great-grandmother and a promise she made to the wind. Avery felt the porch swing of childhood creak into motion again somewhere inside. I'm listening. You'll need to, May said, and the blue of her eyes deepened an ocean at dusk. Because it's really a story about you. If you want, I'll continue with parts 5 to 8 next. Carrying into the war years, love and loss. and the first cracks of the family rift. That evening, the lamp lit up like a private sun in the living room. May's voice deepened, threading the room with memories heavy as smoke. She spoke of ration lines, of blackout curtains pinned across windows, of women walking to the factory at dawn with scarves around their heads, singing to make the road shorter. Every girl in that line thought she was small, May said. But together, we were the spine of a country that couldn't stand on its own just then. People like to say history's made by generals. Truth is, it's made by hands that ache at night. Avery leaned forward. Their notebook from work was still in the suitcase, but the mind wrote furiously. Phrases like spine of a country clung like burrs. May's words didn't sound like history textbooks. They sounded like weather you couldn't escape. You remember Thomas the First told you about? She asked, eyes softening. He wrote letters. Not love letters, story letters. Said he wanted to make me laugh so I wouldn't forget what laughing was for. What happened to him? Avery asked, bracing. One day the letters stopped. May's gaze drifted toward the wall where a photo of a young soldier had gathered dust. That's how war takes people. One day there, next day gone, and you don't even get to slam the door on them. Her voice cracked, but she straightened, iron in her spine. But I kept his stories. And I practiced joy like I told you. That's how you survive. The following nights became ritual. Dinner, dishes, then the lamp. May's war years spilled out in pieces. She told of men who came home with eyes that never focused again, of women who refused to go back to kitchens after learning how strong their arms could be. She told of a neighbor boy, Eddie, who left laughing and came back with crutches in silence. War ain't only fought overseas, she said. It's fought in kitchens where wives hide bills, in fields where fathers plow one-handed. It's fought in the look of a child who don't ask when daddy's coming home. Avery absorbed every syllable. The city had taught them metrics and targets. May taught them that survival itself was an achievement. Did you ever regret it? Avery asked. May lifted her chin. Regret is a hungry thing. You feed it once, it'll follow you home forever. I had grief, sure. But grief's just love with nowhere to go. That you can learn to live with. One stormy evening, thunder crawling like boots across the plains, May opened the chapter of her marriage. Your granddaddy wasn't a perfect man, she said, smiling at the understatement. But he could make a room laugh just by walking into it crooked. She told of dances in the barn after harvest, of arguments about money that ended in laughter because both pockets were empty. She told of burying 2 infants before they ever learned to walk, and of the silence that nearly broke her. How did you keep going? Avery whispered. May touched her chest. Because I wasn't alone. Because we learned joy was stubborn. And because life don't stop to wait for your grief to finish crying. Her voice cracked but steadied again. Love ain't just sweetness, Avery. It's grit. It's staying when the roof leaks, when the fields fail, when the doctor shakes his head. It's making stew out of scraps and still calling it Sunday dinner. By the 8th night, Avery felt the city weight peeling off like bark. May spoke of the years after the war, building a family, a farm, and a community with calloused hands. We didn't have much, she said. But we had enough. And enough is more than plenty if you know how to measure. She told of starting the town's library with cast-off books, of neighbors raising each other's barns, of finding beauty in quilt scraps too ragged to sell. What about dreams? Avery asked. Did you want more? May chuckled. More what? More money, more land, more cars? Honey, the world's always got a bigger box to put you in. But I wanted enough joy to tuck my children into bed without worrying if they'd wake up hungry. That was my more. For Avery, who had lived on promotions and deadlines, the definition of enough rang like a foreign language, strange, yet somehow truer than any speech they'd given in glass towers. One evening the stories sharpened. May's eyes narrowed like storm clouds. Not everything was easy, she said. Your mama and we fought. She wanted out of this town so bad she near tore her skin trying to leave. I didn't understand then. Thought she was ashamed of us. Truth is, she just wanted to breathe different air. She looked at Avery hard. And maybe I held her too tight. Maybe I made her think love was a cage instead of a quilt. The room grew heavy. Avery thought of their own escape to the city, of phone calls ignored, of holidays skipped. For the first time they felt the chain of generations. Links forged in both love and misunderstanding. I don't want to make the same mistake, Avery admitted softly. May reached across the arm of the chair, her fingers still steady despite the years. Then don't. That's the wisdom you carry forward. Not perfection, just less repeating. The 10th night felt like revelation. May's stories had become mirrors. Avery saw themselves in the girl who wanted more, in the mother who built from nothing, in the child who grew up under skies of dust. The panic attack in Manhattan no longer seemed like failure. It seemed like inheritance, the body's protest against living by someone else's list. You hear echoes? May asked, watching their face. Yes, Avery admitted. Too many. Good, May said. Echoes are how the past tells you you're not done listening. That night, Avery lay awake in the guest room, the hum of cicadas pressing at the windows, and realized that wisdom wasn't delivered like a sermon. It seeped like rain into dry ground. And for the first time in years, Avery felt something bloom inside that wasn't tied to ambition but to belonging. The storm rolled in like a sermon. Wind battered the windows, trees bent like penitents, and the electricity flickered until finally surrendering. Candles turned the living room into a cathedral of shadows. May sat in her chair wrapped in a quilt, her face carved by lightning every few seconds. Avery sat across from her, the storm pressing them together like fate. You're afraid, May said, eyes sharp even in the dark. Of what? Of wasting your life. The truth cracked louder than thunder. Avery felt the words stick in their throat. I left here to make something of myself, and now I don't even know what that means anymore. May's hand tightened on the quilt. Making something of yourself doesn't mean building monuments other people can see. It means building something inside you that doesn't fall when the wind blows. The roof groaned. Outside, a branch snapped like a bone. Avery realized this wasn't just weather. It was initiation. By morning the storm had scattered limbs across the yard. Shingles scattered like playing cards. Avery worked alongside May, clearing branches. Every snap of twigs underfoot carried echoes of another kind of storm. One between mother and daughter. You and Mom, Avery ventured. Did you ever make peace? May's shoulders stiffened. We did the best we could. But some words don't fit back in the jar once you let 'em out. Silence swelled between them. Avery thought of all the times they'd avoided calls, choosing deadlines over conversations. Maybe wounds weren't just scars from the past. They were also seeds for the future, sprouting the same pain in new soil. I don't want to keep repeating the silence, Avery whispered. May looked at them long, then nodded. Then break it before it hardens. Don't let pride outlive the people you love. Her voice shook, and Avery realized it was not advice but confession. That evening, with the lamp glowing again, Avery leaned forward. Tell me everything, Grandma. Even the parts that hurt. May's lips pressed into a thin line, then softened. You sure? Truth isn't always kind. I need it. She nodded. Then listen. And don't flinch. She told of poverty so sharp it cut through pride, of choosing between medicine and electricity, of swallowing anger so her children could eat. She told of nights she prayed for miracles and mornings when the only miracle was still being alive. Her eyes glistened. I wasn't always gentle. I carried my burdens like bricks and sometimes dropped them on others without meaning to. Your mama caught more than her share. The words broke something open in Avery. For the first time, they saw not a perfect elder, but a flawed, fierce woman who had done her best with tools too small for the job. And in that imperfection lay the wisdom Avery had been chasing all along. The 14th night, May's hands trembled as she spoke. There's something I never told anyone. Not your mama, not Joy. Only you. Avery's heart thudded. What is it? She inhaled, as if drawing breath from decades past. During the war, after Thomas stopped writing, I found out he'd been killed overseas. But what nobody knew was that before he left, he asked me to wait for him. And for a time I did. Even after I married your granddaddy, part of me was still waiting. Her eyes brimmed with tears. I loved them both. But I carried that secret in silence. It colored everything, my marriage, my patience, even how I raised my children. Love split in two can make a person sharp without meaning to. Avery reached across, clutching her hand. Why tell me now? Because wisdom isn't just the pretty lessons. It's the jagged ones too. You can't build truth if you only use smooth stones. The confession hung in the air like incense. Heavy, sacred, unshakable. Avery sat with it, feeling the ache of a woman who had carried two loves and a lifetime of silence. For the first time they understood their mother's rebellion not as rejection but as inheritance. An echo of wounds never healed. Grandma, Avery said softly. Thank you for telling me. I don't think less of you. I finally see you. May's shoulders dropped, relief escaping in a long breath. That's all I ever wanted, to be seen, not sainted. The rift between generations didn't close with a single word. But something shifted. A bridge, fragile but real, stretched across the silence. Later that night, Avery called their mother. The conversation was halting, clumsy, but it was a start. As May listened from her chair, her lips curved into a tired, triumphant smile. The wisdom had begun its journey forward. The days slowed into rhythm. Breakfast with May, chores in the garden, evenings under the lamp. Avery began to notice small things. The way May hummed when she measured flour. How she tilted her head before telling a story. The way her blue eyes softened when she spoke of love. One afternoon, as they shelled peas on the porch, May said, "You don't come from nothing, Avery. You come from people who bent storms and survived. Carry that like a torch, not like a weight." Avery frowned. "What if I drop it?" May smiled. "Then someone else will pick it up. Wisdom doesn't die, honey. It just changes hands." The words settled deep, anchoring Avery in a way no promotion ever had. For the first time they wondered if the life waiting in Manhattan was the right one, or just the loudest one. The morning came when May didn't rise with the kettle. Avery found her still in bed, eyes closed, breath shallow but steady. She waved away worry with a thin hand. "Don't look at me like I'm leaving this minute. Old women are stubborn." But the weight in her voice betrayed her. Avery sat beside her, heart pounding with the knowledge of time's cruelty. "Promise me something," May whispered. "Don't chase life so hard you forget to live it. Slow down enough to notice who you're with, not just where you're going." "I promise," Avery said, tears burning. Her lips curled into a small smile. "Then I've done my job." It was the last clear lesson she ever spoke. May's health faltered quickly after that. Hospice came, gentle voices in softer hands. The house filled with quiet visitors, casseroles, prayers whispered like secrets. One evening, as cicadas wailed outside, Avery sat by her side. May's hand felt fragile, paper over bone. "You've got strong shoulders," she whispered. "Don't let them carry only other people's weights. Put joy there too." Her last breath came like a sigh of relief. The house stilled and even the clock seemed to pause. Avery pressed their forehead to her hand. Grief and gratitude tangled in the same breath. The torch had passed. A week later, Avery boarded the flight back to New York. The city skyline rose sharp and glassy, unchanged, but Avery no longer fit into its angles the same way. In the office, Marisol asked, "Ready to dive back in?" Avery looked at the pitch deck, the endless cycle of urgent tasks. And for the first time they didn't feel afraid of saying no. "I'll work," Avery said slowly, "but not at the cost of forgetting myself." It startled Marisol into silence. But Avery didn't wait for approval. They carried May's voice inside, steadier than any performance review. Weeks passed. The panic no longer stalked Avery's days. They called their mother every Sunday. They began cooking, clumsy at first, then with joy. They planted herbs on the apartment windowsill, the smell of basil filling the room like memory. One evening Avery pulled out their laptop, not for slides but to write. Not metrics, not briefs. Stories. May's stories. Dust and war, love and loss, grit and joy. Words flowed not like tools but like inheritance. When they paused, they felt the quiet presence of May in the lamplight, smiling. Avery whispered into the night, "I'm carrying the torch, Grandma. And for the first time in years, life didn't feel like chasing. Felt like living.